you for coming to SOAS's Students' Assembly against the Austerity rally. This rally is one of a number of events taking place this week to raise awareness of the government's plans to sell off the student loan book, culminating in a protest in London on Friday. At the moment there's more than 50 campuses across the country all doing different bits of direct action and holding their own discussions. The plan for this evening is we've got 6 different speakers here. They're going to talk for 5 minutes, explain a few things, give you their views, their opinions, plans, things that we can do to stop this. I'm going to start with Francesca Martinez, who is sat next to me. Yeah, round of applause, thank you. Who was promoting the War on Welfare campaign, which has got enough signatures, so it will be going to a parliamentary debate later this month, so that's fantastic. We've got Neilsen, who is one of the Sussex 5 suspended for protesting and waiting to see what is going on. James Meadway from the New Economics Foundation, former SOAS student and now SOAS lecturer. Sean Wallace, okay, thanks. Okay, we've got Keily, who's NUS Black Students Officer. Clare Solomon from the People's Assembly, former SOAS President and new President. And Sean Wallace from UCU, who's also going to be talking tonight. So, okay, they're going to talk for 5 minutes, and then what we'll do is we'll open the floor up for any questions, any discussions. If you want to direct a question to someone specific because of what they've said, that's fine to do that. We'll try and take as much input from everyone and make sure everyone gets to take part. So, Francesca, do you want to start?
Yeah. Hello. Thank you. It's all a bit shit right now, isn't it? Yeah, I can't believe that. I thought like the worst thing that could have happened to students had happened. I was wrong. I'm totally shocked about what the government is planning to sell off your loans. In fact, it's happening right now as we speak. This is, of course, part of a wider corporate agenda. Basically, the key issue is the transference of public money into the private sector. So it's kind of a wider fight, really, and an attack on our basic rights. And I feel very strongly that this is a real key issue. We need to fight this and win this. And if we look back over history, all our rights and freedoms that we currently enjoy have been won and fought for by people like us, by students, by people on the street, getting together and believing in better. I think one of the key issues right now is it's not hard to find people who feel this system is fucked. Like, that's quite easy to agree on, isn't it? I think what's harder to convince people of is the fact that there are other ways of doing things. There's a real sense of apathy and helplessness and cynicism. Unfortunately, that just serves those in power. It serves the status quo. They want us to feel like this is the only way. And I think there's a sense of things are shit, but this is the way things have to be. And I really want to challenge that. This is not the way things have to be. This is one of a myriad of possible worlds, and one that's been carefully calculated and carried out by an elite minority at the top. This system, in fact, isn't broken. It's working fucking perfectly. And it's benefiting a tiny minority who are in power. So when they come out with their grave faces and their kind of, looks of concern, say, sorry guys, we're going to have to make more cuts. They're not sorry, they bloody love it. And I think this global recession has been a real cover for their neoliberal agenda. And I think we kind of got an inkling of this recently, didn't we, when Osborne and Cameron came out and said, actually, austerity is here to stay. So we got an inkling that that was the real agenda all along, and it's actually nothing to do with the recession or the financial crisis. I just want to challenge any notion that this is about money. It's not about money. It's totally ideological. I'm glad I said that word. I always struggle with that. And so it is ideological. There is money. There's loads of it. In fact, just to be fact to you, in 2010, city bankers got £14 billion in bonuses. That's in London alone. That's more than the entire disability benefit bill. So 1 in 4 of the UK's companies pay any tax. That's basically just a quarter of companies pay any tax. The rest pay no tax. In 2011, the oil industry got over £280 million in tax breaks. 24 million a year goes to private landlords to subsidise high rents. 3 billion in 4 years to private railway companies in subsidies, and £700 million a year to the defence industry. And of course, £20 billion on war. And let's not forget the big one, 850 billion on the bank bailout. Now these are big figures, okay? There is money. The problem is not a lack of money. The problem is, where is that money being spent and what choices are being made? Now if we can compare those figures with currently what's happening elsewhere in society, we can see that 13 million Brits are under the poverty line. A family in Britain is made homeless every 15 minutes, which is frankly astonishing. 500,000 people are on food banks. This is totally unprecedented. A sixth of children live in poverty, and a third of disabled people live in poverty. These are shocking, shocking figures, especially when you contrast them with what's being spent to subsidise certain sectors at the top of society. So I think it's really important to realise that this is not about money, it's about trying to shift culture. It's about trying to reduce expectations. It's about trying to implement a normalisation of disgusting inequality and reducing life to basically economics. So if most of us, if we're not born into privilege, basically I think they want us to feel like we can't have access to the same opportunities as those with privilege. That is absolute bollocks, and we need to get together and fight it. And as students, you're such a key part of that. You're the next generation. You have to demand better, because if we don't, these changes will just come through and they'll be normalised, and the next generation will grow up thinking it's normal to pay, 100 grand for a degree and to have a life of debt. And a quick word about debt. Debt is used as a form of control. It's not purely economic. If you come out of uni with 50 grand around your neck, you're not going to be able to cause much trouble or have time to think about how and challenge it. So it's crucial that we join together alone that we fight this. And just a last one, I'd like to say, you know, society right now values GDP and profit. I'd like to say, like, what the fuck is GDP anyway? Like, where was the meeting that we agreed that life was about GDP? Like, I want to challenge that. Life is so much more than fucking GDP. Life is about opportunity. And we need to really shift our goals and create a world where people of all economic backgrounds have the same opportunities and right to happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. James, have you got a mic there? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I want to start where Francesca left off, I suppose, or underline the point that this was never, any of this, for the last 3 years, maybe 4 years now of austerity, it was never about money. Never really about money. I mean, despite the story that we're all told, it was all about money. And we had to make cuts because there was no money left. The cupboard was bare in Osborne's particularly stupid idiom. The cupboard was bare, the money had all run out, we'd all spent too much money, so you have to cut spending, you have to impose cuts, trash the welfare state, cut back on education spending, all this sort of stuff because there's no money left. I mean, Francesca's absolutely right, it was never actually about the money. And Cameron says more or less the same thing himself just a few months back, standing at a golden lectern in the City of London in front of a baying crowd who are lapping this up of city bigwigs and saying that we're going to have permanent austerity. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking, and I think many people did think this, that when this government was elected, saying that, well, we're going to have to make some cutbacks until things recover, until things get better, get the finances in order, you might be forgiven for thinking that that means a bit of belt timing, a bit of things being unpleasant for a while, and then we're all back to normal. You know, we're back to the kind of the world that we were used to. Very clearly, very obviously, that if David Cameron is talking about permanent austerity, this is not about money. This is about something much more insidious. Something I don't think anybody was really told about in that election. Something that the coalition has never, until this point, said that it was about. Something that gets you to the heart, actually, of a remark Thatcher once made. Margaret Thatcher, who died last year, the former Prime Minister, who set in train much of, I'm not sure if that's her cheering for a dying or cheering for Thatcher, but who set in train much of this stuff, who said, economics is simply the method, the object is to change people's souls. And that, I think, is precisely what is happening when you look at what this government is doing. Another sort of little representation, of course, another indication, just a few months back, a slightly mad interview where he said some rather mad and unpleasant things with Norman Tebbit, who was, you know, Thatcher's bulldog in a government, a really horrible, unpleasant cabinet minister, a really vicious class warrior for the ruling class, who said, look, he was asked, there was a couple of things, is there anything that he regrets of his time in office? And he says, yeah, there's a few things I regret about our time in office in the 80s, that we didn't go far enough on welfare, and we didn't go far enough on education. And what has this government single-mindedly dedicated itself to doing since it arrived in office? An offensive on welfare, the demonisation of those on benefits as scroungers at one end, the vicious 25 billion of additional cuts that Osborne is now promising on the other one, and education. Look at the Education Secretary, Michael Gove, and then look in a more subtle fashion at what David Willetts has been doing for the last 3-4 years. That this is never about the money. This is about changing how major institutions in society operate. You know it's not about the money because as soon as the education reforms were announced, after the Brown Review in 2010, that led directly into the riots and the protests and the absolutely brilliant occupation of this university and many, many others. After that report came out, the Higher Education Policy Institute sat down and did the sums. And they said this loan scheme they're proposing, it'd work out cheaper, rather than subsidising everybody's loans forevermore, it'd work out cheaper if the government simply paid the £9,000 fees. It'd be cheaper just to have the government give you a free education rather than the ludicrous system where you take out a loan that is subsidised by the government for the rest of your working life. It's cheaper simply to pay people to go to university. So of course it's not about the money. If it's cheaper to do this and you're busy saying, oh, we're going to save money, and you're not going to save money, you don't really care about the money. You want to do something fundamental to the character of education, and that's why the student loan sell-off is so critical. They're trying to gloss it. They're trying to offer assurances that interest rates won't go up. They're writing out complicated financial derivatives to try and get all this stuff working. It was financial derivatives, of course, that led to the crash of 2008. But okay, let's try and apply this to the student loans company just for shits and giggles. They're trying to make all this work, but in the end, even their own sums don't add up. Look up the work of Andrew McGettigan, who knows more about this, I think, than anybody else in the country, certainly including the civil servants in biz, unfortunately. He knows more about this than anybody else. Their own sums don't add up. The Treasury projections for how much money they're going to raise from the sell-off forgot to take account of the fact that once you've sold the loan book off, you don't get any of the interest payments back again. So your sums don't work. None of this makes accounting sense. It only makes sense as an ideological attack, that we should all be going into university and coming out as different people, financialised people, people trapped by debt, people who think differently about the world. Not people who care about the world, but people who care, in Thatcher's words, that there is no such thing as society, there are only individuals. That is the drive, that is the attack that's taking place here. And it's higher education and education in general who are on the cutting edge of that ideological push by this government. It's so important what you're doing. We have to start winning the argument about the kind of not just education system we want, but the kind of society we want. And that can start with an opposition to this ludicrous, ill thought through, ill costed, ideological sell-off.
That was really great, James. Lewis Neilsen, one of the Sussex 5. Oh, next.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think this campaign to stop the privatisation of the student loan is actually really important, because the privatisation and the sell-off of our loans actually affects all students. So what this campaign has the potential to do is actually involve really mass numbers of students that we haven't really seen since 2010 in the student movement. But I also think it's really important to look at the wider picture, because as the other two speakers have made clear, the sell-off is part of a wider Tory attack on austerity, on education and on the public sector in general. And what this privatisation does is, it follows the trend of what the Tories have told students, and that is that we have to pay more and get back less. Because if you think about what we've been through since the Tories have come to power, if you think about the trebling of fees, the huge cuts to funding, the widespread privatisation of services, the 13% real wage cuts to university staffs, what we're being told is that actually we are going to get back less, but we're going to have to pay more. And what's the reason that the Tories give for that? As James made clear, they tell us it's about cutting the budget deficit and so on. But this is really hypocritical and actually quite disgusting, because while they say we have to cut the budget deficit, they still spend millions on Trident. They still don't clamp down on business tax avoidance. They still cut corporation tax. So that really shows the ideological nature of this attack. And I think that really, it's really important that any students that we bring round this campaign, and any students that get involved in opposing this sell-off, it's really important that actually we bring them into the other campaigns, and some of the wider campaigns. And really here I'm talking about the UCU, Unison and Unite strikes, and the series of strikes we've seen over the past couple months. There's another one on Thursday. And I think that actually these strikes are really important, because what they represent is that for the first time since 2010, since the Tories have brought in all these terrible cuts, it's the first time that all three campus trade unions, covering lecturers, covering cleaners, covering all staff, have actually come out and said enough is enough. Education can't be attacked anymore. So it's really important that us as students stand with them and actually show that students and staff united are going to defend education. And I think And obviously recently we've also seen a crackdown and a bit of criminalisation of students who have tried to defy the Tory agenda. We've seen the suspensions of myself and 5 other Sussex students. We've seen a student suspended and arrested in Birmingham last week. And of course we saw the cops on campus and the terrible police violence here. And I think actually that this week of action has come at the right time, because our response to this criminalisation is really important. And I think on the one hand, we obviously have to mobilise mass students, like we did with the 3,000 strong demonstration here last term. We do have to mobilise mass students against the idea of police violence. But I think also, more importantly, we can't be intimidated, and we have to continue about what we were protesting about in the first place. And that's why it's so important that anyone we get involved in this week of action, we really actually remind them why we were protesting in the first place, about the issues such as the staff strikes and such as high rents and so on. And I think that, you know, the draconian crackdowns that we've seen by university management and the state are actually an attempt to deter students, not just from taking part in protests, but also to deter students from taking part in joint action with staff. Because the reason we were suspended at Sussex was not because of any violence, it was because we organised student solidarity on the picket lines on the 3rd of December strike. And that's what scares the university management and the Tory governments more than anything, is when students and staff unite to try and defend education. So actually, I think it's fantastic that we've got 50 campuses participating in this week of action. But actually, I do think that it's more important that any students who we bring into this campaign, we also bring them into the other campaigns. So we don't just have a student movement that just focuses on campaigning against privatisation, or just support the staff strike, or just opposes the victimisation of students. What we need is a student movement that challenges the whole Tory agenda. Thanks.
Okay, next up is Sean Wallace.
Right, I'm not going to say very much because I think this is a students' meeting, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak. I bring the fraternal greetings of UCU and on behalf of the other unions to this meeting, because I think these kinds of meetings are extremely important. And they're important because what we need more than anything at this moment, it can be summed up in 2 words: unity and clarity. We need to be clear about the nature of the offensive we face, but we also need to be absolutely determined to maintain unity against a government and a set of employers that will try to divide us. It's extremely important to understand that it gives the confidence to staff to take strike action if they know their students are supporting them. And it's incredibly important for the students to know that if students are arrested and demonstrations are banned and so on, that staff will put their bodies in harm's way, as our colleagues in Neilsen from here and elsewhere and the UCU went and put themselves into the kettle when students were being arrested and stood side by side with them and got arrested side by side with them. It's extremely important. That is the kind of unity that you cannot put money on for those people who are interested in money. This is not about this is about actually being clear that we have the resolve and the